live already. This always throws me off. Let's kick this show off and get started.
I just realized everybody is here to party.
Greetings and welcome, fellow barium-inimists, fluoroscopists, and cross-table lateralists. I am your host, and I am not a radiology technician. Nope, I'm a technologist, and I've been in this field long enough to know that just because you came into my emergency room at 2 a.m. with a chronic back pain times 6 years does not mean the x-ray should be static. This is the Radiologic Technologist podcast for RadTechs by RadTechs. Thanks for listening.
All right, this is Ron Jones with the Radiologic Technologist YouTube channel and blog. I do have a short-lived podcast. That's what that intro is from, but I still like the intro. Today's video is going to be centered around toxic workplace environments because let me just show you a couple of things real quick. So we have several environments. We have several places where you can go to get help as a tech, ask questions as a tech, be amongst compadres that work in your field, that know what you're going through. One such place is my Facebook group that I started a couple years ago, the Radiologic Technologist Facebook group. I try to do live radiology Q&As on Saturday when possible, but I always want to plug this group. There's no money to be made off of Facebook, as we all know, at least when it comes to groups. But people come here and ask questions and get answers. This person is in their first week of RadTech school and they're overwhelmed. Any information, helpful advice, they got 14 answers. So I'm just showing you that this Facebook group exists. Anyone is welcome to join. There are certain rules to follow, and if you don't, you get booted. But it's just for people in the field, people interested in the field, so that they can ask questions and get accurate information from those in the know and not spammy websites that get paid if you go sign up with an overnight flighty tech school. And then another option for you is, of course, the YouTube channel and my blog. This blog, the radiologictechnologist.com, has over 200 articles where I've answered questions for techs and shared experiences. And that's part of what we're going to be doing today, because there is a really nice subreddit on Reddit called Radiology, and I also spend time there looking at images that people post and reading about other cases. And it struck me, someone left a question in the weekly career general questions thread, and they were talking about their toxic work environment. And to just kind of summarize, and that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be about toxic work environments and how to deal with those situations as best as you can. So let me just bring up another screen here. So there's that. I've got so many tabs open. I just want to make sure I don't miss something. Okay. Do you have tips on getting a job as a new grad? Yeah, Black Barbie 1. Is he? I see. Yeah, I can get into that. Let me address what I came here to address, and then we can chat about that. And if you gotta go, that's cool. I'll talk about it at the end of the video. But today, the main focus, and anybody else is welcome to ask questions as well. I'm always happy to answer those. Today's video is directed at a Reddit user who said, I started my career and I fast-tracked to IR. I'm in a situation in a hospital that is toxic, and I dread going in. I've been looking for jobs for over a month and haven't had any responses. I'm afraid I've only been there for 3 months and it looks bad to other employers, but I can't stand being at that hospital. How do I explain that to another employer? I was always told to never talk bad about a previous job. That's my morning bang kicking in there. How do I explain to another employer I was always told never to talk bad about a previous job. I know I won't get a recommendation from them. I don't know what to do at this point. I've been looking for PRN jobs too and no response. I don't know how to get in somewhere. Any advice? So I sent a link to a video. I sent them to this one. Toxic workplace, toxic employees, and getting fired. And it's a 26-minute video about toxic workplace environments. And I'll grab that and I'll share that. This is going to get tedious, I can tell already. I have too many windows open. Let's see. Let's close that one down and see if we can find, you know what I need to do is bring it and tack it. Tack. Give me just a second. I'll get it. Hang on. But, we want to be here. So that's where I can post it, is right there. Boom. Okay. That's that video. So, let me pull up my notes because I made several notes before starting it so I could try to stay on track. So, I posted that video saying, here's what toxic workplace environments are like, and here's some ways to deal with it. And then they replied again a few days later that they quit. It was such an odd experience. Two techs hated each other and were using me as a pawn in their efforts to get each other fired. Every conversation was documented and looked at it in the worst possible light to try to be used against someone. Whoever was training me, the other would be jealous and point out my mistakes that I was making, and then kind of saying I wasn't progressing to make it look like the other teacher was a bad teacher or the other tech was a bad teacher. I have never been anywhere where people documented everything like that, and they know the game so well. They know what to say and what not to say. It felt like I was in a lion's den and had no idea until I was in their grips. I'm so new. I would have no idea how to approach HR and what I could say. They're also the type to try to blacklist me or badmouth me to other hospitals. I'm worried that I hadn't had any responses from other hospitals so far. Also, I didn't get from your video what I can say about it in an interview. So, there's a lot to unpack there. Let me add that. Let me add that to my notes so that hopefully I don't forget that part. What to say in interviews. So let's get started. So I believe it or not, I've been in the same situation, a little bit different, but a lot of similar aspects. So I can speak directly. First of all, I'm licensed in X-ray and CT. I've been to ultrasound school, and I've been in radiology management for over 10 years. I've been nominated throughout many for outstanding radiology educator. I've been around. So, can employees keep a journal? And the answer is yes. So I had a nurse, a radiology nurse, that was keeping a personal journal, and it was because she didn't like another one. It was actually her boss. She didn't like her boss. And she was keeping this childish little journal of all the things she felt that boss wasn't doing right, and I can only expect that in hopes of turning it in to get her busted and get her in trouble. And first of all, how childish can you be? I mean, this is like whispering in your friend's ear on the playground, right? It's so childish. But I ended up going to HR about it because the journal became known that it existed and the staff knew about it, and then tensions were just weird because whenever they'd see that nurse get that journal out, everybody's butt would pucker, so who's she writing about? Is it me? What's going on? And so I went to HR, and they said there's actually nothing that can be done about an employee keeping a personal journal. Now, it shouldn't be left out where other people can grab it and read it, where it would cause problems in that manner. But there actually is nothing that you can do about these childish people that keep these little records like this. I mean, a mature employee would confront the person, and really the rules of engagement in the hospital are you confront the employee. Even administration would rather see you confront the employee first. Now, if it's if it's something sexual harassment or something that you're not really super comfortable with, then maybe you can skip that point. But everything I've ever been taught is you confront the employee that you're having the problem with first, and then if that doesn't resolve the issue, then you go to your immediate supervisor. You don't jump straight to the frickin' CEO of the hospital. That makes everybody look bad all the way up, and it irritates the CEO that you didn't follow the chain of command. That's why they hire a chain of command. So the big dog doesn't have to deal with these little problems. At least that's how they look at it. So always confront the person direct, and just be direct. One thing I learned when writing up employees from HR, you leave your opinions out. You just state the facts. So when you address a person, you could just say, "Hey, Bob or Tanya, the other day when you called me out in front of staff and patients that I didn't do something correctly, I felt like you kind of said it in a demeaning tone, and it embarrassed me, and I didn't appreciate it. In the future, I'd like for you to tell me what I do wrong, on the side in private or something like that, and just tell them exactly what happened and exactly how it made you feel and what you'd like to see happen in the future, and move on. Don't say, I heard from Sally that you were saying that I sucked," and just leave all the opinion crap out of it. Just tell them how you feel, and then my personal favorite way to document things like that is an email to myself. Because if you write it on a piece of paper somewhere, or write up a report, or like some of these, these journals in people's books, you could lose that. Send yourself an email, put some keywords in there that help you be able to search for it, conversation with Sally about demeaning conversation or whatever. And then just send it to yourself and file it away. Don't send it to your boss. Don't send it to your best friend. Just send it to yourself, and then you'll have a record of all these things that occur. And so, can employees keep journals? Yes. And should you address these people instead of keeping journals? Yes. And keep a record of your conversations about doing these types of things in an email. Now, have employees kept secret audio recordings? Yes, they have. Is it legal? It all depends on your local laws and your hospital's rules and regulations. I have seen techs wear a microphone or turn their little phones on so that it records everything, and they face the microphone out in their scrub pocket. It was a long time ago. I had a tech approach me once. The old Mesa General where I used to work, he was getting in trouble for not getting his work done, and he felt like other techs were tattletelling on him that he wasn't getting his work done, and so he thought it was smart to record his entire shift and the conversations he had with everybody as a way to protect himself about what was and what he was and was not being told to do. Now that's a stupid thing to do. Nobody tells you what to do when your exams are coming off a printer on requisitions. You're in charge of looking at it and going and doing it. Sorry, I'm really got some stuff in the throat there. So this tech, he even said, "Do you want to hear it? Do you want?" I'm like, no, plausible deniability. I was just a tech at the time. I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with your idiotic things that you do. Keep me out of it. So I'm sharing that because you just have to bear in mind that you never know what people are doing. You never know if they're keeping these secret journals. You never know if they're recording things. I got turned in once. I told an off-color joke in a radiologist's office. It was a private conversation between me and another radiologist. And it was a joke, and somebody was listening outside the door to our conversation and turned it in. And I know that they did that because in a meeting with HR, they said, "Hey, I heard about this joke you told," and they recanted the joke to me, and I'm like, holy crap, that was me and the chief radiologist having a man-to-man conversation, and somebody's turning it in, and so you never know who's doing what jerky behavior that you're not aware of. So you just have to be careful all the time. Number 4, keywords to use in HR. So a lot of new techs are, and I was one of them. You're afraid really to go talk to HR because you don't know what to say. You feel like you're the new person. You're not sure how to present yourself. But what I can tell you is there are some key words that if HR does not take action when you say these words, they could be held accountable for not doing their job. So, for example, trigger words are a hostile work environment. If you go to your HR representative, and of course you have to schedule an appointment, you can't just walk in there blurting hostile work environment. You got to schedule an appointment and be calm and professional. Say, I have some concerns about my work environment, and I feel like it's a hostile work environment. And they'll say, oh, why is that? And then you explain the facts of what's going on without all your opinions and all your emotions and all that stuff. Another key phrase is compromised patient safety. So if in this person's situation where the techs are kind of fighting and pulling this tech back and forth and using that tech against each other or whatever, if that's getting in your head and compromising patient safety because you're now focused on what these jackwagons are doing and you're not focused on your patient safety begins to get compromised. So hostile work environment, compromised patient safety, these are words that if your HR hears and they don't do anything about it, don't start investigating things. If something does happen to a patient, you can say, hey, I went to the HR representative and I told them it was a compromised patient situation, that the patient safety was compromised, and they didn't seem to care. And so, here we are at a sentinel event because your HR didn't do anything about what I had already reported. Some other words are discrimination. That's an old school, that's been around a long time. And bullied. There is less and less tolerance for bullying in the workplace environment. It's taken very seriously now. And so I'll just leave those four with you because those are four very serious and often used to get the attention of HR. Hostile work environment, compromised patient safety, discrimination, or bullied. Like techs who aren't happy with their shifts will often use the compromised patient safety or feel understaffed. For those of you that are saying, man, our administration just keeps cutting people, or when people quit, they don't replace them. A common way to approach that is to go to HR and say, I feel like we have a compromised patient safety situation because people keep quitting and we're not hiring people to replace them. And I'm having to do more and more work, which spreads me thinner and thinner. And I don't have the time needed to focus on each step of the way to make sure my patient stays safe. And I feel like I'm just being asked to shove this workflow through and crank out I feel like it's all about the numbers, right? It's not about the patient. It's about how many exams I can get done in a shift. And that's not good for patient safety. It is compromising my patient safety. Because ultimately, as techs, it is our job to do the best exam possible at the highest level of patient safety, right? And then you can break those down. Best exam possible is using ALARA and all that stuff. Highest image quality, best post-processing, quick turnaround time, all that stuff. So there's, for those of you that are looking for phraseology on how to approach HR, there's some words for you. And I highly recommend you write down what you're going to say and even take it with you. Have some bullet points. I'm here because I'm concerned about patient safety. I'm here because it's making me uncomfortable in my job. And it's even okay to say I'm starting to not want to come to work. It's when I wake up in the morning and I realize it's time to go to work, it's making me feel in a negative way. Because these are all triggers, and I'll explain a lot of this in a little bit when I get to an article that I wrote. But these are all triggers that lead to burnout, and hospitals are keenly aware that burnout is increasing. And what techs don't really see on the employee side is the huge cost to the hospital when you have to train a new employee. It's not just, you quit and I'll hire you. There's all this time spent training. There's employee benefits that have to get paid. There's a lot of money behind the scenes. There's all the marketing and advertising spent to find another tech. There's the new employee orientation that has to be held. There's a lot of things behind the curtain, so to speak, when you have to replace staff. Hospitals want high staff retention. They want employees to stay happy and stay put because it saves them the most money that way. When you have a toxic work environment and employees are bolting left and right, it's not just bad for their image. It hurts the pocketbooks, and it hurts patient safety, which hurts the pocketbooks. So, number 6, or number 5, what can hospitals say when called about jobs? So, this person was concerned about, and I've been in this situation too. I have left jobs in a negative light because things weren't going very well, and then I noticed I'm not getting as many callbacks on jobs as I used to or that I normally do, and it makes you start to wonder, well, what's the old boss saying that you left on unhappy terms with? And so what they're, and it might be different state by state, but there should be employment laws around this. And I'm not an HR guy, so I don't know everything about HR, but I've learned a lot from some really good HR representatives. So to my knowledge, what they are, the only things they are allowed to say is the length of employment you were there, so they can verify dates. Yeah, Bob worked here from January of 2019 to February of 2020 or whatever. Length of employment, and then they can ask, the new company can ask the old company, would you rehire this person? And that's where they're allowed to say yes or no, but they shouldn't go into any details. They shouldn't say, well, they had 5 write-ups, so probably not, or well, we fired them and blacklisted them, so no way would we, or they're not allowed to go into any details. The only other thing that they might be able to say is the job capacity. If you're applying for CEO somewhere and you were a floor tech, they may be able to say, well, to what capacity was this employee working? Well, he was a floor tech. But that's about it. Now, you need to do some research in your locality to find out exactly what they're allowed to say. But I've actually spoken to an attorney in the past and gotten their professional opinion, and they unofficially told me that if I wanted to, if I was really suspicious about what my old employer was saying, I could have a friend or somebody call and pretend to be an employer, call the HR and say, can you tell me what would you say about Ron Jones as an X-ray tech? And you can record that conversation. And if you catch them bad mouthing you, they're breaking the law, and you can sue them. And this is, of course, unofficial. This attorney's like, I would never tell you to do this, but what you could do. And so that's always an option. And who doesn't have that buddy that's happy to have a couple beers and pretend to be the HR rep from another hospital to try to catch a hospital doing things they're not supposed to do. So, there's ways to kind of investigate that, but be careful in what you do. And then number 7, 3-month job is questionable to put on a resume. So in this particular case, and I've had this happen also, where you went somewhere for one reason or another, like I had one, a 90-day contract that expired, and I left. And another one, it was kind of uncomfortable, didn't like the toxic environment, and I left. Well, then you have to ask yourself, is it worth putting that on your resume? Because it could raise a red flag. Because if we're being honest, it's just like first impressions. People make first impressions automatically, even though we know we shouldn't, they're wearing this kind of clothing, so they must be this kind of person or whatever. But it happens. It's just inbred culture. It's what we do, and then we learn how to unwind that. We learn to say, I've been taught so many times not to judge a book by its cover in so many different aspects of life that you just never know. So, let's see. So if you're putting that you're only there for 3 months, you have to ask yourself, was it significant? Like if you just graduated X-ray school and you worked somewhere for 3 months and then you quit because it sucked, it's possible you could say that, just leave that off your resume, because there's no way for that next job to know that you were there unless, and I'll grant you, radiology is a small environment. It's a small world. I run into people a lot from other states that knew so-and-so, or we know each other in some way or went to the same school or whatever. Radiology is a small world, but if you don't need to put that little 3 month stint on there, like if you had just graduated, like what I was just saying, it's possible you could say, I took my boards, I started putting my feelers out, and I'm waiting for the right job. And it's been 3 months, and I just haven't found what fits my schedule, what fits my lifestyle. And so, I'm looking for my first job, and just leave that little 3 month stint out. But there's that chance that could compromise, well, why didn't they find a job? Are they not good enough? But that all should be able to get vetted out in a good interview. So I don't know that I would put little 3 month stints on the resume unless you felt it necessary. And we can talk more about that in another video if you want. But consider whether or not you want to put that on there. And you think, well, if I sit out too long, I may not get hired. My wife, who was an x-ray tech, she was out for like 5 years or something to be a mom and a housewife and all that stuff, domestic stuff, and got hired back on, and she's been working for 5 years now. So is it nerve-wracking to go that long without shooting an x-ray and jumping back in? Absolutely. But it can be done. That's what training is for. So there's that. So the 3 month job is what you put on a resume. I just put pros. It shows you kept up on your skill set. Cons, they can make you look bad. So that's part of the pros and cons, right? If you put that on there and the next employer calls them and they talk smack, it wasn't worth putting that 3 months on there. So number 8, let's talk about culture for a bit. So there are, if you go to Google and just type in employees are quitting, there's article after article after article of the great resignation, how employers drove workers to quit, why millions of workers are quitting their jobs, top reasons employees are quitting. We're just tired. Employees are tired of putting up with garbage in these work environments, and I've been working since 2003, let's say, and there was plenty of times where I felt like I just had to put up with crap because I needed a job. I put up with radiologists who were jerks, who would cuss and throw things. I put up with bosses that didn't know what they were doing, and just put my head down and did my job because I needed a job and I didn't want to rock the boat. But there comes a point when your work-life balance, your life satisfaction is more important than what you're going through. And so we'll get into that in a little bit when I get into my article on burnout. So let me pull the notes back up. We're on number 8 about culture, the headlines. I like to revert, if you want to hear somebody who kind of had everything figured out, it's a little bit older. It's about 20 years old now, but there's a gentleman named Jim Rohn, R-O-H-N. Jim Rohn was a traveling motivational speaker. He was actually from Idaho, here where I'm at. But one of the things he used to say is, if you're not happy at your job, move. You're not a tree. And that may be a little simplistic, but the point is, where there's a will, there's a way. I get that you may have something that ties you there temporarily, family, finances, school, whatever. But if you choose to stay there, just know that ultimately, hopefully, whatever it is that's anchoring you there can be changed. Because there's nothing worse than spending too many years in a toxic work environment. And if there's one other thing I've learned over the years that I can share, is that most employers just don't care about you. They try, and there's some good ones out there that do, but it's really about productivity, and it's about making money, and it's about keeping the customers happy. See, smart people know that the way you keep customers happy is to keep the employees happy. And every now and then you'll find somebody that understands that model. But the problem is, above that person that understands that model is some MBA, non-healthcare background administrator that's just looking at charts in some war room, trying to figure out how he can do better than his competitor and make himself look good. And it's no longer about patient care. That's another video. So if you're not happy, move or put your feelers out. And another separate topic that I've talked about is always try to have a backup to your career. Always try to have a backup skill. See, I learned from my buddy Scott a long time ago. He was a policeman, and he decided to learn X-ray. And I'm like, what's the matter? You tired of getting shot at? And he said, no, I just want to have a backup plan. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, look, if something ever goes south in my career as an officer, I need a backup. I need some kind of skill that I can do. And I said, oh, I'm right there with you, buddy. I went to X-ray school and I went to ultrasound school. So if something happens to one, I've always got the other. And he's like, no, you're missing the point, Ron. Those are both healthcare. If anything ever happens to healthcare, you're screwed. And I thought, well, what could ever happen to healthcare? Everybody's always going to need healthcare. Look at Corona. Everybody across the board, whether you're a tech or an administrator, you were being sent home unpaid, or if you wanted to get paid, you had to use your own PTO. I didn't have a backup. So I've done a backup, just so you know, putting my money where my mouth is. I went to a realtor school, got a real estate license, and I sell real estate on the side now. So actually in this boom of people moving out of California and everything, here to Idaho, I've actually been able to do pretty well on the side selling real estate. So always have a backup plan, whether it's fixing computers or cosmetology or whatever it is, YouTube channel, whatever it is, get something else going. For one, it takes your mind off your job. You can take pride in your job and you can learn your job the best to your capabilities, but you need a break and you need to step outside that world. And sometimes that helps you focus even better or solve a problem in your job when you're outside of that job doing other things. There's actually a whole philosophy behind that. Forget what you're trying to solve for a while and the answer will come to you. So we're on, let's see, the culture, Jim Rohn, toxic, but you may have to stay there. I always advise not to leave until you have something else lined up. So that's tough, and we're talking about our friend here on Reddit. He quit. He was saying he had a hard time finding anything else, so that's the worst case scenario really, is to be jobless. You got to stick out that crappy job till you find something else to replace it, even if it's night shelving clerk at Walmart. You got to have something else lined up to keep the money coming in, because if you get in a pinch, then that stress starts to land on your shoulders. So I always advise not to leave until you have something else lined up. Now, you could get fired. I've been fired. Probably most of us have been fired at some point or another if you've been in the job field long enough. So there are times when you may not have other things lined up, but I can tell you when I've been fired, all but once I had other PRN jobs where I was working. I was usually PRNing at 2 to 3 places. So I always had a backup in that sense. So let's move to the tech burnout article. So on your screen is my blog, and there's this search box up in the right-hand corner that you can put. These are some of the most common things people are looking for. What are the best shoes to wear for X-ray? Should I shield my patients or not? Ideas for Rad Tech Week. How to do good interviews. But burnout is a top search term, and that's kind of what we're talking about here today. And so I have this extensive article, and I've actually given lectures on this very topic. And in the case of this person we're talking about on Reddit, there are in this article I list about 13 situations that can cause burnout. And the point of the article was not just to point out the burnout, but it was to give 2 ways to fix it, 2 ways to solve it. One perhaps on the side of the tech, another on the side of taking it to your boss and having them help you out. But this guy on Reddit has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 6 of these burnout things happening to him, and that's why there's your proof. This guy quit. He's like, I'm done. I don't even care if I have another job lined up. You guys suck, and I'm out of here. And so let's go over some things here. I recommend this article to any tech out there, and it really applies to more than just radiology. But I recommend this because if you're brand new, it gives you an insight into what could be coming. Because a lot of us experience at least one or two of these in the field. If you're a seasoned tech, it helps you to identify it. And at the end, I go over how can you tell if you're getting burned out, how to reduce the stress, what are some self-care methods, which is kind of becoming a new big thing, how to do more self-care, and then when is it time to quit. So I took some notes on our friend here on Reddit, and he starts at number 7. So there's inadequate personnel, right, when we're understaffed, which is happening everywhere. There's unusually high patient volumes because administrators are more worried about productivity than they are with culture, and so they're jamming up, double booking, all kinds of crazy stuff. Number 3, unhealthy tech lifestyles, and that really goes over, you're so focused on your work, you're not really taking adequate breaks, you're eating garbage out of the vending machines, we're drinking 15 Red Bulls a day, or whatever it is to stay awake. And so there's unhealthy tech lifestyles. And then there's ambiguity with the job, which is where we're starting with our friend on Reddit. And let's just jump to that. So each one of these are hot linked. You can jump right down to it. So ambiguity within the job. Radiology departments are often known for ambiguity in their roles. Not having a clear job responsibility can be just as bad as having too much workload. Confusion about the roles and not knowing how to conduct oneself within a job is also known to be a potent ingredient for burnout. Who's in charge? Who's in charge when the leader steps out? What about swing shift after the day shift leader has gone home? Does the night shift have a designated leader? Who covers the outpatient clinic after 6 p.m.? So I've seen all of these, and it really throws a team in chaos when, if you're an 8 to 5er and your supervisor or lead tech leaves at 3 because they come in at 6 or something like that, then from 3 to 5, you're kind of like, when something hits the fan, who do you go to? Do I go bother my director? Do I take it on myself? If I take it on myself and I screw it up, am I going to get in trouble? Is there a CT tech, lead tech on that maybe X-ray can go to ask for help? All these things really need to be figured out and be in a written plan in the department so everybody's clear on who has what responsibility. That is one issue that this person's having, because it sounds like he's being trained by 2 IR techs. They're both training him differently, and they're both complaining about how the other person trained him. And so, well, who's the trainer? Who's the boss? Why are so many people trying to tell me what to do? There needs to be one. That's what a clinical instructor is for, right? And clinical instructors should go through a little clinical instructor training that teaches them how to do the job correctly. So there's the first problem at this job that he quit, was there was no designated leader, there was no designated trainer, and there was toxicity between these two people who thought they were better than each other and how they trained this employee. So the problems it can cause, this situation can contribute to rad tech strep, obviously, because he quit, he or she quit, as they feel helpless with no amount of control within the job. This can lead to a lack of motivation, obviously, and also a feeling of neglect as they do not feel sufficiently recognized for their role. So like he said, or he or she said, they were getting called out for their mistakes. Were they getting praised for what they did correctly? Probably not, because it was a negative environment. If the shift goes well, nobody gets recognized as doing a good job. But if something goes wrong, everyone hears about it. So we've been there, right? Most of us have seen that. Here's my suggested tips. Set clear expectations as a team. When a leader is designated, respect that person and position. Do your assigned job to the best of your ability. If you have a newer team member who isn't quite up to speed on a particular type of exam, offer to mentor them. Then there's the old see one, do one, teach one, right? That's kind of the old school mantra of radiology. Show them a few times how you do it, then ask them to show you. When everyone on a team is competent and comfortable in their roles, the shift can be crazy busy but still run smoothly thanks to a team that knows their roles. Now here's an alternative solution. Take turns rotating the lead tech position. Own one location of your job. Do you really like the excitement of the traumas from the ER? Then take the initiative and offer to be the ER tech for that shift. Let someone else focus on the OR or the outpatients, etc. Be proactive in learning more about your job. Read up on current events from the ART, ASRT, and your local radiologic society. Increasing your knowledge of your field may lead to a better understanding of your role as a radiographer and less ambiguity of what you do. Okay? Now, number 8. Let's just hop back up here and hot link. Number 8 is inappropriate equipment. Did I get that one right? Inappropriate equipment can include outdated equipment that barely functions or not having the right equipment at all. Performing radiographic equipment and giving doses of radiation to patients does not make sense if you aren't using the proper equipment. I don't think that's what this person on Reddit was saying, but since I'm here, I'll go ahead and discuss it. This can be a cause of burnout because if you're trying to do an exam and your equipment sucks, it makes you look bad. It may make you look bad to the patient. It may give you crappy quality images, which irritates the radiologist. May cause you to have to repeat images. These are all things that can lead to burnout. I'll never forget. I got in trouble once as an administrator. We used to have these morning huddles down in administration every morning, and I had a IR room, an old IR room that was barely limping along, and we were about to build 2 new state-of-the-art rooms, and I had a couple of things in that room that were held together with duct tape. Literally. But whatever, right? It works. Sometimes you get tired of waiting for senior administration to fund what you need, and you just do what you got to do to keep the thing running. And so we were in a meeting with all the other directors, and it came to be my turn, and I said, all's well in radiology. I'm holding together our IR room with some duct tape, but other than that, we're doing great. And, I got chuckles, and that was the whole point. But my boss pulled me aside after that and said, I don't want you to ever do that again. It makes us look bad. It makes us look like we don't have good equipment. And I wanted to say, we don't. I'm holding it together with duct tape. But it was one of those situations where I need my job. I have a family to feed. I'm not going to talk back. And that was another one of those learning lessons where, you may think certain things, but you don't necessarily need to say them. But inappropriate equipment can cause huge problems with burnout and compromised patient safety, right? So let's go back to our friend on Reddit. I have down that number 9 was pertinent. So number 9 is a vulnerable environment. So healthcare institutions are where sick people seek treatment, right? This fact alone also makes it a hot spot of communicable diseases where radiographers are exposed daily. This can compromise their health in a significant way. Besides the nosocomial infections from daily work, there are repetitive motion injuries to watch for as well. A major cause of non-lethal injuries in radiographer, as well as other healthcare providers, is musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs, and these are injuries due to sprains and strains. Manipulating patients into the correct positions can result in overexerted muscle and micro-injuries. Over time, this can result in conditions such as muscular microtrauma, inflammation, and scar tissue. And we have an increasing number of patients who are obese, which adds to the physical stress of the rad tech job. And there was I actually did a couple of polls on some Facebook groups like I had talked about earlier. How long have we been going? I don't want to, I need to keep track. Not sure. I feel like we're pushing for at least 45 minutes. Well, I'll just keep going and figure out where. I'll be up 43 minutes. In these polls, I said, have you experienced burnout and what caused it? And I note here that a tech named John noted that he was constantly lifting and moving patients that are getting bigger, and where he works, they're not giving proper equipment like Hoyer lifts. And so there's the perfect opportunity to go to your boss or to HR and say, I feel like we have compromised patient safety, and my safety is compromised. Because if we would just buy one of these Hoyer lifts to pick up our larger patients and set them on the table, we could save lots of back injuries, which would save the hospital money because rehabbing broken techs is a lot more expensive than buying a Hoyer lift. That's a whole other topic. So I'm just pointing out that one of the burnouts that can be affecting you is the physical environment itself of the radiology department. Problems it can cause. A month doesn't go by that the radiographers find out after they shoot a chest x-ray on a coughing patient that the patient had tuberculosis. Techs are constantly compromised, and it isn't something they could have prepared against. When the signs are out to protect yourself from airborne and other precautions, technologists comply subconsciously and instantly, but eventually something can catch up to you, like C. diff or MRSA, which are a constant threat in our jobs, but PPE can usually protect us. It's the needle sticks that when we're tired or not following a protocol that can break through the PPE and cause injury, which I've seen techs with needle sticks, and they, for the most part, could have been prevented. Suggested tip, slow down, take your time, follow the protocols that are there to protect you. I've seen plenty of nurses who double glove when they have a concern about communicability. I don't know that that's necessarily proper, but I've seen it a lot. Don't be afraid to stop and assess the situation that you fully understand, or so that you fully understand what's at risk. Do you need to call in a second tech to help you with a compromised patient, for example? Do you have the appropriate level of PPE ready for when transport brings down that compromised patient? So we saw a lot of that during COVID, right? Lack of PPE. So that's up to you as a tech. That's one of your tech duties, is to make sure your department's always stocked. An alternative tip is evaluate your exam rooms at the beginning of your shift. Make sure all PPE is properly stocked and in appropriate locations. I need to fix that. Check your work list to see what inpatients might be coming down to your department ahead of schedule, right? Are any of them compromised? Is it possible for you to do their exam portable so you don't have to bring their germs down to the place where you work all day long? So that's that one. What's the next one? I feel like a lot more of these apply. I wonder if I did. You know what I did? Instead of doing, I think I did number 7 instead of burnout situation. So it was, yeah, that's what it was. So ambiguity with the job, lack of proper training was one of them. Quite interestingly, lack of proper and sufficient training can also be a significant stressor. How can you be expected to excel at your job if you don't get fully trained? Then comes the annual evaluation that grades the level of how well you're doing your job. Being downgraded on an evaluation based on skill sets you were never oriented on can give a push towards burnout. There are a lot of different types of examinations done in a standard imaging department. There's general x-ray, ortho and spine, C-arm in the operating room, O-arm in the OR cases, ortho cases, fluoroscopy, speech and swallow studies, IRED, so you know what all there is. There's so much that we do. While most radiography schools attempt to teach all of this to each student, there is no guarantee that every student sees everything during their clinical rotation. Like, you're not going to get trained on an O-arm in an x-ray school. You probably get minimal, if any, C-arm training. That's usually on the job. So the basic competencies listed for graduation from a credentialed radiography program are helpful, but if you passed competency in the OR on your first rotation, then saw no surgeries on your second clinical rotation, it can easily be a year since your last OR case. Then you start a new job after graduation, and it would be a mistake for an imaging department leader just to assume you know how to do everything and throw you in the OR. The fact that you may not even see everything on your clinical rotation is why the ARRT allows ghost comps, or simulated competency exams. When a radiographer is asked to perform fluoroscopy without having been trained, it can be stressful for both the tech and the radiologist and the patient. A senior person in the department might have assumed that because the procedure is a standard imaging exam, the radiographer has been trained on it in school and is capable of performing it on their own. But, like Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. Trust that your techs know their jobs, but verify for certainty. The problems this can cause is if you're not properly trained, techs can be placed in situations where they're not capable of capturing a diagnostic image of high quality. Worse yet, they can put patient safety at risk, or even themselves and those around them. Do not perform exams that you aren't comfortable with, and let your leader know why. You should have annual competencies that you do in your department, and you should have an educator or some type of leader that walks you through them, kind of like an evaluation, to make sure you're comfortable at every level, identify where you're not comfortable, and work on those that you're not comfortable with. Suggested tech tip. All imaging departments should have a competency list. Here it is. Upon hiring, new hires should be scheduled to review this list with a member of the imaging team. A successful model I have seen employs an imaging educator who's an employee who reviews these documents with each employee. The list contains all procedures that any employee could be asked to do, including outlying clinics and locations outside of the main imaging department. If there is something on the list that the new hire is uncomfortable or unfamiliar with, it's the educator's job to line out some training in that area for the new hire. My recommendation for a successful onboarding of a new hire and the training they should receive starting day one is a full week of training in the OR, a full week of training on fluoroscopic exams, a full week of training on how the ER functions, and a full week on how standard exams are done within the general x-ray department. That's just 1 month. 1 month of orientation. If you start a new job and they throw you in and give you a little orientation and walk you around the hospital and turn you loose, you're headed for trouble. So you need to pay attention to this and ask for guidance. If there are specialty clinics outside of the main department, like ortho or spine or something, and there's a possibility the new hire will be asked to cover shifts there, then they also need the training and orientation in those departments. I've seen where techs who work in the main hospital department are asked to go cover some outpatient clinic where there's spine stitching equipment that they've never seen. You can't expect people to cover stuff they're not trained on. If you do not receive this type of dedicated training at your job, keep track of yourself of what you feel you missed and politely ask for it. Everyone will be better off if you know all about all that is expected of you. It is not enough to say, I'll just look in the protocol book if you don't understand something, although that's what we have to do sometimes. I do that a lot in ultrasound. An alternative tip, when there's downtime between patients or a slow shift, ask your teammates to show you how to do some of the things you aren't super comfortable with and see if you can get better. The goal is for you to be comfortable performing every type of exam that can come up at any given time. I remember a tech who got called for an exam in the OB operating suite. It was for a sponge count after a C-section. It had been a long time since she had been called there, that she not only wasn't sure what to do when she got there, but she completely forgot where the OB operating room even was. So she had to ask how to get there, and then I remember when she walked in the room, she said, well, what do you want me to do? And they ended up, the staff called me and said, what's going on? This person didn't even know what they were doing when they got here. So, upon arriving, okay, what do you want me to do? That did not instill confidence for those in the room, and it made the imaging department look bad. So own your job and know what you're supposed to do. So back to the top. What else do we have? That was that 8? Yes. So then there's 9. Vulnerable environment, we already went over that. And then there's 10 personality traits. So in this part, I talk about really type A people who are all wound up and can get excited easy. But for our friend on Reddit, it's about these two teaching techs who were kind of at each other's throat and using the tech as the pawn and all that. But the individuals who have type A personality are also more vulnerable to rad tech burnout than others. These individuals are predisposed to seek perfectionism and have an inherent need to be in control. High achieving individuals and those who do not work well in a group are also more prone to stress and ultimately suffer burnout. The problems it can cause. If you're a high achiever and work with a tech of opposite tendencies, you may need to figure out a compromise. You are the type who grabs the next exam that needs to be done without deciphering whether or not it will be difficult. But your partner tends to let everyone else go first and be a bit picky about which exams they want to do. Frustration will build up and it could become volatile. The first line of action is always to confront your coworker yourself, and I mentioned that earlier. So in this case, you would say, hey, Bob or Sally, I've done like the last 3 while you've watched. I think we should take these in rotation, no matter what the exam is. I do one, you do one. I do one, you do one. That way it's equal work, and I would appreciate it if you would follow along, keep up, however you want to phrase it. The suggested tip, approach the other employee and talk through what they perceive the workflow to be and how it should be triaged. Maybe you'll discover that there are certain exams they aren't comfortable doing. In that case, refer them back to number 5 because they need better training. Otherwise, share thoughts on the best way to triage orders as a team through shared responsibility. An alternative tip, agree with your teammates to not let any one person bear the brunt of the workload. Watch the work list, and if you see one person continuously ending up with cross-table lateral hips and skeletal surveys, offer to help or take the next one. Nobody wants to do hard exams all day. And if you do find someone who likes skeletal surveys, say, have fun and get out of their way. Maybe buy them a coffee. So I had that happen to me. I was on a night shift for a long time, and I had a supervisor call me in and say, I ran the numbers, and I noticed that your partner is doing a lot more difficult exams than you are, and you're doing a lot of things like chest x-rays. And I had to educate them on the fact that while my partner was logging in to do cross-table lateral hips, it was because she was asking me to let up and hold the leg up in the air so that she can get the proper angle. And so it's not that I was nowhere to be found, it's that I was the grunt with the lead on holding the leg while the tech was doing the paperwork and the taking the actual image. So things aren't always what they seem, but you can't get offended when you're confronted. You just need to be prepared to share what you know and help educate. So that was number 10, and then we'll lead to jump down to number 12, ineffective leadership, which this person is experiencing in Reddit. And I encourage you to read through this whole article because you will come across at least one of these in your career. But we're just picking out the ones that may apply to this person that we're talking to on Reddit. Ineffective leadership. There's a popular quote on LinkedIn that says, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. We've all had that bad boss, and we all know what it's like to work for them. And in this case, we're talking about the two techs that are ping-ponging our IR tech on Reddit. This is one area you really don't have many options aside from the occasional company survey that goes out to all employees. Take solace in knowing that ineffective leaders typically don't last very long. And sometimes upper management brings in tough managers simply to clean house. So again, I surveyed people on Burnout, and this is what a couple people said. Danny said, it's not cool being mandated to stay for overtime because of being short-staffed or because other staff called out sick. That's bad management. They're not managing the schedule appropriately. Raina wishes she could approach ordering physicians and tell them that the imaging exam they ordered is non-diagnostic for the diagnosis in question. She feels discussing this does no good and even results in hostility for questioning her orders. Who's been there, right? Sometimes you feel good that you advocated for the patient, but often you just spend your day feeling defeated because the doctor just says, I'm the doctor, you're the tech, shut up and do what I said. And that's a hostile work environment, and that's what you tell HR. The problems it can cause, ineffective leadership, frustrations can arise when frontline staff doesn't feel like management has their best interest at heart. Be it ethical concerns or just being driven for the sake of maximum productivity, management styles vary widely. The demoralizing effect of poor leadership can bring down productivity levels and corrupt department culture. Recovering from a bad work culture is one of the hardest things to fix, and I'm speaking from experience there. And with bad employee culture comes poor customer satisfaction scores, which rings the bell of senior administration and also affects profitability because we get paid based on how happy the patients are, right? So, suggested tip. The easiest thing to do when you find yourself at odds with leadership is simply to do your job to the best of your abilities and keep your head down. Don't turn a blind eye to inappropriate behavior or improper patient care, but don't do anything to draw unnecessary fire on you either. As mentioned earlier, inadequate leaders typically either move on to greener pastures or are let out to pasture by senior administration. Check out the administration profiles on LinkedIn, and you'll see most leaders move around every 2 to 3 years. That's a whole other topic in and of itself. An alternative solution, after evaluating a situation in question, see if you can offer a better solution. Leaders don't like staff who always bring problems, but they do like when staff bring problems and corresponding solutions. I can't stress that enough. It's one thing to bring the problem to your boss, but try to bring a solution with it. They will be much more apt to want to help out. It'll help them solve the problem quicker, and it'll show them that you're not just a complainer, you're a problem solver. Do some research on what other facilities do in these same scenarios, or talk to friends you have at other locations. Use our Facebook group to ask questions. You can even do it anonymously. You can send me a contact through there and say, can you share my scenario? I don't want anybody to know it's me because somebody might know where I work, and I'll post your question anonymously. In essence, be the change you would like to see in your department by offering ways to make it better. If you feel you excel in this area, consider going back to school and obtaining a higher degree. Bachelor's degrees are often enough to get into imaging management. Master's degrees look even more favorable. There are some very attractive graduate degree programs being offered online these days, and costs have gone down significantly. I recommend Weber State's MSRS if you're at the master's level. It was very affordable. It was all online. You only had to go to campus a few times. And that actually I was able to use to get to my doctorate program. So I highly recommend Weber State. So what was that, 12? So that was ineffective leadership, and then he hit. So then we're going to skip to how can you tell if you're getting burned out? And this could be helpful to all of you. How can you tell if you're getting burned out? It is essential to identify the signs and symptoms of burnout before it becomes chronic and takes over your life. If you are experiencing more than 2 of the following symptoms, it is very likely that you are teetering on the edge of a burnout. Number 1, exhaustion. Extreme exhaustion emotionally, physically, and mentally is typically the first sign of a burnout. Apart from not having the physical energy to get your work or complete a task, if you feel like you've been totally spent and have nothing left to give, it's time to evaluate your options. Now, we've had rough shifts, I get it. You have multiple traumas in the ER, multiple car pileups, and all these MVAs come in. It's going to exhaust you, especially emotionally. But if every day is like that, either you're an adrenaline junkie and you like it, or you need to consider your options. The next one is health issues. Prolonged exposure to stress without resolving it can result in digestive problems as well. We're talking ulcers, right? As well as other conditions like diabetes and cardiovascular complications. Other health problems that precede a burnout are high blood pressure, difficulty sleeping or staying asleep, dependence on a substance. Caffeine is my issue, depending on a substance, being depressed, displaying negativity. These are all issues that are common symptoms that herald a burnout. Then there's lack of motivation. Everyone has had one of those days when getting up to go to work is a burden. However, if this is a daily struggle, that's not a good sign, especially if you have always loved going to work in previous time. You ever heard anybody say that? I used to love coming to this job. I don't anymore. When you do not find the motivation for work, everything will be mechanical, and you will find no joy in going to work, meeting with your colleagues, or treating the patients. The next one is problem focusing. With so many physiological and psychological things happening, your brain will eventually be foggy. You will also be more forgetful than usual, and this can be dangerous when you are a technologist of any capacity. If you have trouble concentrating on your work or even doing normal activities combined with other symptoms mentioned above, you're on the brink of a burnout. Now, we all have those days, right? When we have the brain fog. Remember, Joe, what was his name? Joe Banks. But it shouldn't be every day. So if you're having problems focusing on your job because, our Reddit friend, he's having a problem setting up what he needs for the next hour procedure because he's worried Sally is watching his every move, or Bob is in the other room. You can tell he's chewing the ear off of the supervisor, and it's probably about him or the other person or whatever. These things are causing you to lose your focus. The next one is negative attitude. Another clear sign of chronic stress and burnout is having negative thoughts or being depressed. You are more cynical and have trouble keeping your thoughts in check. Along the same lines, you become easily irritable and cynical about life and things in general. This can have a grave effect on your relationships both at work and at home. And your spouse may tell you, "You're so grouchy when you come home from work." That's a good sign that there's issues at work. So, how to reduce the stress in a busy healthcare environment. The healthcare environment is a demanding job. There are a lot of things that can trigger stress in most people. However, you don't have to surrender to it or be a victim. Humans work to live and not live to work. Our top tips on how to reduce stress in a busy environment, healthcare environments are: 1, your well-being comes first. Many people struggle with this concept, but it's not about being selfish, because that's how some people feel. Like, I need to take care of my job first because it pays the bills, and if it's making me unhappy, that's a secondary issue because I got to pay the bills. But it's not about being selfish. If you are well and strong, you can do more than help the patients. If you are weak and on the verge of breaking down, you are not much help. Jim Rohn, as I mentioned earlier, one of his other sayings was work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Every now and then remind yourself why you became a radiographer. I understand that you care deeply for your patients, but you also need to fight compassion fatigue. Avoid feeling guilty or blaming yourself for situations out of your control. Another thing you can do is have an active social life. And I don't mean going out drinking every weekend, which could help, but that can contribute to burnout. I mean, cultivate a healthy relationship with friends and family. You can join communities and groups of people who share the same interest. I showed you the Facebook group already. We also have a LinkedIn group if you're on LinkedIn. I'm going to have to end this one. Got to go pick up the kids. Having an active social life is a lot of help. You can read the rest of the article. Physical exercise is a must. Take time to relax. Improve your sleep. Speak to a senior peer or a mentor. And then I have a section here on self-care methods for stress relief. Know what your priorities are. Take time to relax. Take a mini vacation. Nurture your spirit and emotional life. Make sure you're eating properly. And then finally, when is it time to quit your job? So I've touched everything. I had notes to do. I would have read through this, but I'm running out of time. I typically don't like to go over an hour anyway, and we're at an hour 6. A lot of people just don't have the patience to watch a video this long. So I hope this helps you out and gives you a lot of tools that you can use to have a better job or find a better job or deal with your job better. And if you have any questions, shoot them to me on my the Rad Tech. There's a little place up here that says contact. You can send me a message that way. You can reach out through the Facebook group. I get stuff everywhere, emails, Messenger. Send me a question. I'm happy to answer it. I'll do a video for it if you want. I can mentor you through Zoom if that helps. I'm happy to help. Do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you need anything else, guys. Take care.